Hi, welcome to Straight Talk with Steph with me, Steph Beatty, property investor and mentor. I'm here today with the other half of me, Phil Walker. I'm also here with property investors and developers, Tony Edwards and Neil Thornton. Neil is also a book publisher and an author of Barnthorne Publishing. Today, we're going to talk about everything to do with business, entrepreneurship, money, property, and whatever takes our fancy and wherever the conversation takes us. If you like what you hear, you need to hit that subscribe button and give us a little follow. So we'll start today and we'll introduce Neil. So Neil, who are you? What do you do? What's your name and where'd you come from?
Okay, so yeah, I'm Neil, as you said, Neil Thornton. I'm from Runcorn in Cheshire. What do we do? So property, obviously, is one of the main things. But also, I've been writing books for 10, 11 years. And more recently, a year or so back, set up my own publishing company. And we're now publishing other authors. And we'll get into it, but one of the subjects we cover now will be property.
Brilliant.
So with the property itself, as everyone starts, terrace houses, semi-detached houses, buy-to-lets, flips, and then you go on from there. And I'm sure we'll get into the nuts and bolts a bit later.
Yeah, and I know Tony will have a lot to say about buy-to-lets, little flips. But Tony, who are you? What's your name? Where'd you come from?
Okay, so I am Tony Edwards. I'm a property investor, property developer based in Cheshire. I've been in the sector now for about 9 years. I started off my career early on as a civil engineer. So I did 13 years of heavy construction. So really the natural progression for me is when I wanted to open our own business was property. I think property is an investment class. Everyone wants to be involved in property. They want to own property. They like the idea of amassing, a nice sized portfolio, which eventually is going to become that nest egg for someone to be able to retire. So that has been our initial goal. And then over the last few years, we've been just investing in different kind of sectors within property, really trying to focus on where the money is. And I think that's your main goal. It should be, your first goal, your second goal, and your third goal is literally just follow the money. So,
lovely. Thank you for the intros, guys. Phil, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
So I'm Phil, so I'm the other half of the business with Steph. I'm currently working in aircraft manufacturing. I've been with Airbus for 16 years.
Lovely. Thanks, everyone. So what I want to get into today is, obviously, Neil, I know you said we start off with buy-to-let and the terrace, the 2 to 3 bed houses, which is what we've done, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think you can't, Tony might disagree. I don't think you can go wrong with your bread and butter buy-to-lets and building that foundation. You've got to start somewhere. It's the base of that pyramid, isn't it, that holds everything else up. Neil, I'm interested in two points of view here. I'm like, why did you first go for what I would call bread and butter properties, and what are you doing now? And then I want to come to Tony and I want to know why you hate them.
it's not that I hate buy-to-let investments. I just think there's easier ways to make money.
Yeah.
And I think, with the ever-evolving current structure of how you purchase properties and the tax involved with purchasing properties, like stamp duty and capital gains tax and, everything which you put onto the landlord, effectively it's just not become as viable as what it used to be. So, properties it was very easy to kind of get into a deal which, made commercial sense, where now you look at a lot of properties and think, well, is it worth it? And a lot of the new investors that are coming onto the scene now, when you listen to how they talk and what the kind of deals that they're investing in, they're not great deals, and they're not great deals because we've been there from before, and now it's just I think the market's evolving, so you just got to evolve with that market. Otherwise, you just make less money, which gives you less time.
Yeah, and I don't think the current the current budget changes have helped any of that, particularly for us who have got the little terrace houses and the little buy-to-lets. But that's what you've started with, Neil. That's what I started with.
It's what most people start with, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd say 99% of people start small and build up. This lunatic starts big and carries on and goes bigger. But yeah, we start... how I started was... this is back in the day where you could gift deposits from family members.
Yeah.
So it was actually my first residential. In my early 20s, I purchased my grandparents' house. They moved into a bungalow. Gifted deposit, I think it was 60k. 10 grand deposit gifted from them. Bought it for the 50. Spent 12,000 on it, doing it up. And then it was valued at 90, I think. And straight away I was thinking, I bought it with no plans to move. It was, I will buy this house and stay there. But straight away, the bug just hit. I could see the uplift. I could see, and it was when prices were high, you know, back then. And I put it on the market. It sold in one day for asking price.
When was that? What year was that?
Oh gosh, it was a couple of years before the crunch.
Okay, lucky.
Well, it's not so lucky because I went and bought a big house and then, you know, I moved on and then obviously that went down in value.
Yeah.
But you sit on it, it comes back in the end, you know. You only, it's all saying, isn't it? You only lose money if you sell. But actually, so what I did then was, that was the bug. I moved house, sold that, moved to a bigger house, done the same again, got some plans for an extension, built it up. And then I started buying other investments then because I'd loved doing it with the one that I'd bought initially. Bought a couple of terrace houses. I moved again, but kept the one that I'd just done. Rented that out, and then it just carried on. That was 20 odd years ago, you know.
Okay, where did you find them? Obviously, you sold that first house. How did you fund the rest of them?
So I've been in the chemical industry for a long time, so it was mainly my job. I think that's on one occasion to buy a house, I actually sold my car. Because I was a young single lad. I bought my first house. He had a Lotus Elise and a house. People thought I was a drug dealer when I moved in. I wasn't. I was working like 3 jobs, but there you go. So you know, I sold that. I mean, that was also to do with the fact that I'd got with my now wife, who also had a child, who's now 35, 36, and it only had 2 seats. So I thought, right, sell that. But instead of going out and buying another flashy car, expensive car, I bought an old rundown thing, knowing that I could then get that cash and go on. And that literally put a deposit on a house.
Yeah.
You know, and back then it was a lot more easy. It was a lot easier to do. You know, just from an estate agent, you can go and buy a house that needed work, and they would price it correctly. So if it needed, I mean, I was doing bigger renovations, but if something needed £10,000 worth of work, it was 20k off.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
We don't get that now.
Don't get it now.
I feel like, obviously, 2008 and all of that and the crash, obviously, I'm only 37. I was at uni and I've got like a memory blank because I was drunk the whole time. But basically, you hear about that crunch and what it did to the property market, and you're even younger, so you won't probably even remember either. So I feel like ever since we've been in property in the past sort of 5 and 6 years, I just feel like we've just come across like hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, and it's good because it gives you thicker skin and like a level of resilience you don't think you've actually got, and especially when you're dealing with the amount of money that you're not used to ever dealing with. But yeah, we can't just walk into an estate agent, unfortunately, so we've had to get creative in the way that you find deals. But you don't go to estate agents anymore, Tony, do you? When was the last time you walked into an estate agent?
I don't think I ever walked into an estate agent. I never kind of come up through the same process that you guys did, you know, where it was a case of like try and go into an estate agent and build rapport with them. One thing I was going to touch base on what you've just mentioned as well is that you were saying, you know, you've had some thick skin, you've had to be resilient. You shouldn't have to be.
No.
I don't think you should have to be. I think if you look at any other business sector, you know, the idea of investing something for, 12 months or 18 months just to break even is ridiculous. So I think now, especially now in the current market, a little bit of information goes a long way. So if you can spend the time to actually do your research, find out what the objective is, whether you want to do social housing, HMOs, buy-to-lets, if you're going for capital appreciation, if you're going for rental income because you want the cash flow. So really get into the crux of it. Don't travel too far, stay in your local area. Do enough research that you can be confident when you do find the property that you can move on that property ASAP. You do make your money, so a lot of the gurus are right in some of the things that they're saying, but a lot of the time they want you to buy into them. Just making sure that you've got the right advice. But if you're going to part with your money, just make sure you know what you're doing and just make sure it's the right sector.
It's interesting that obviously a lot of the gurus say, you make your money when you buy and all of that. You said you have to wait 12, 18 months just to break even. But for some people, and I will think about some of my clients that I teach the basics to, I think that's okay for some people. It's not ideal if you're transacting on the scale that maybe you are and you're doing bigger deals. But I do think that's okay, because some people just want to get into property because they want to build a legacy, you know, leave a bit more to their kids or get a bit of extra cash flow every month. But I think when you get to a point where you look at it and you go, actually, look at all of the work involved here, and I'm not going to pull my money off for like in some instances 6, 7, 8 years, and that's a really shitty return on investment. So at what point do you go, right, okay, I'm done with that now, let's scale the fuck up and make some big money? What's big money to you? Give me a figure.
Well, you know, £10,000 is a lot of money to anyone, but is it a deal that I would want to pursue and then spend time and effort onto? Not really, because, you know, it's all pro rata based on your purchase price. So a big deal.
Well, there's two on the go at the minute, isn't there?
Well, yeah, but I think it's all relative. It's relative to what, you know, is big to anyone. Now, I think my point before was, if you're going to be investing in property, the idea that it's going to take you 12 to 18 months, you know, it is great if you can make your money when you buy. Mm-hmm. So you can make your money when you buy through various ways. So if you can get, you know, a really good discount, you know, everyone talks about off-market deals and trying to find out that, you know, that investor who needs a little bit of USP, or, you know, they need a help with something. So, you know, as long as you're adding value, if you can add value in day one, and that could be through knowledge. It might be through, you know, you've seen something that no one else has seen on that specific site or property. So really, it's just, if you're going to invest in property, it's not quick, and we know it's not quick. I know that you might get itchy feet and you're thinking, well, the money's in my bank and it's not really in. So would I really rush into a deal now? And yes, it might be cash flowing, but at what point does it become positive cash flow? Or would I rather spend a little bit more time, create that structure, you know, go out, spend more time finding a deal, but when I do find that deal, you know, it's an absolute belt of a deal. And
it's going to give you better money for the work that you've put in. And I think that's what a lot of people, unfortunately, I think if you think it's not happening quick enough, then you're in too much of a hurry. And I think a lot of people go into property thinking that they're going to get rich in a couple of years. Well, actually, it's not really the case in that.
Slow, isn't it?
We were like, when we bought into it all, we'd be financially free in a year, and we were like, oh my god, I'm gonna live this dream life. We were sailing on my yacht, and didn't we?
It's human nature to want to collect as well. So we love the idea of having a property, having 2 properties, having 10 properties. But in reality, do you want the properties, or do you want the money that comes with the properties?
But then this is where I'm sat in a room full of men yet. This is where I think property can sometimes be a bit of a cockfest because men, then particularly the men that I meet at property events, it's always, how many properties have you got?
That's the first question everyone asks. When you say you're into property, how many have you got? So what does that matter?
It doesn't matter.
It does though, doesn't it?
It depends what I could have. I could have 1 property, cash flowing me 50k a year, or I could have 50 properties, cash flowing me 5.
But that's not the norm. The norm is that you'd have lower budget buy-to-let properties. So if I go to a networking event, my idea is to network, you know, to network, to build my net worth, to see who I can interact with, see if there's any synergy, see if we can build and grow together. So a lot of people that you do meet at networking events will talk about the journey. So where are you on your journey? And if
the journey,
a validation point straight away is like, well, who are you? What have you done? How many properties you've got? So if you meet someone who says, I've got my first buy-to-let property and I'm in it for the journey and I'm going to do all these great things, but they've not done it yet. So they might be keen, they've not got the experience, and they might do a load of the wrong things. Would they really benefit me on my journey? So, and there's nothing wrong, you know, with that at all. But if I might meet someone who's doing bigger and better things than me, and, you know, I might be able to pick their brains and be able to learn from them and vice versa. So it's really just a validation point. And
people try to suss each other out in the first couple of minutes.
It's what you wear, what you dress, how you look, you know.
That's interesting about what you wear, what you dress, how you look as well. Because I think for a lot of people going to property events, depending on what you wear will depend on whether somebody approaches you or you approach them as well. What would you wear at a property event?
Well, I went to the first one. I went to PBM, the Liverpool one. I think you go to the Wirral one more.
Yeah.
I met you at Liverpool, actually.
You met me at Liverpool,
yes.
Yeah.
So the first time I went there, I had my briefcase with my notepad and all my business cards and pen, and I don't know why.
You had a bag. You had a little satchel as well. Yeah, I remember that.
You know, pretty well. I might as well have. And by the time I'd been there 10 times, I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt and trainers, you know, and because you never know what to expect.
Yeah.
Who are the people and what's going on? But yeah, you know, image, to a degree, yeah, it is important. But then...
But once you've built those relationships with people and you figure out, oh, can I collaborate with you? Can I do a deal with you? Or can you give me some money so I can buy another house or property or land or whatever? That's interesting. When we didn't like networking, did we, at first? Well, I certainly didn't, because the most local one was Manchester. And I always thought it was a bit of intimidating. Even though I come across as really confident.
But we would never have thought that. Say we, people in the room, because you were probably the loudest in the room.
Oh yeah, I'm like a...
So inside you may be nervous, you may be shy or even.
Yeah.
But I'd never come across. And you know, we're sat here now, all because we went to that networking event. And when I wanted to write the book, who popped into my head straight away? You.
Oh.
You know, so, well, it did, you know, I phoned you, didn't I? And pitched it to you. So, yeah, you may have been nervous, you may not want it to go there, but...
I just didn't see the value in it at first. I think that was the thing. It was like, why are we bothering? Why are we going to this networking event in Manchester when we're investing in the North East? What's the fucking point of this?
So as well, we were going to these networking events, and the same people were turning up. There was nobody new or nobody fresh. So it was all
fresh.
You'd met everybody anyway, and then the first 10 minutes, it'd stand up, what's your name, where you're from, and how many properties, or where are you on the journey. And that sort of thing. So it was the same every time that you went there. There was nobody new there,
and everybody had gone through.
I found that annoying.
They'd all gone through the same sort of education that we'd gone through with that property company, and everybody was sort of in the same boat. Everyone was just a beginner. And there was really no one to learn from unless there were speakers at the front of the room and they were there trying to sell you some shit, which we just got a bit sick of.
Yeah, give us 10 grand and we'll manage your buy-to-let refurb for you.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's that deal gone out the water.
Yeah, bollocks. But then networking, I realise the importance of it now because, like you said, if we hadn't met once or twice in Liverpool, maybe actually, I think I only met you once in Liverpool.
And then the Wirral, maybe? I can't remember.
Maybe. I haven't been to the Wirral one for a while, but we met and then, and I just think the universe works in funny ways because if we hadn't have met at the Liverpool PBN, you wouldn't have asked me to be in the book. And then I wouldn't have said, hey, I want to do title splits. And then you wouldn't have said, hey, I know someone who can do that.
Yeah, we're doing deals together. We're doing books, a series of books together. You know, we're moving some properties on. One of the things which is seen as a negative, and potentially it is, but you know what, most people at the events are trying just to get into property. Yeah. And they obviously the easy route in or the initial step is sourcing. They've got no capital. So, you know, a bulk of the people are sourcers. But when you need a sourcer, you've got a load there to choose from.
Yeah, it's so competitive as well. And I think unless you are doing it full time, you've got some serious direct to vendor strategy, some serious shoe leather on the ground. They do these courses that they pay not even a couple of grand for anymore. And then they try and sell you a deal from Rightmove and you just think, what the fuck is that? I could get that myself. But no, I think I'm really glad because of the collaboration. So that's how you introduced me to Tony, because I was like, really fancy doing some title splits. In theory, I understand the concept of it in writing. But then you were like, hey, let's meet Tony.
And then, you know, we had the meeting. We all had a meeting, didn't we? And then, you know, we decided we'll get a little pot together between us and we'll do something.
So tell us about your house. That's the best title split I think I've ever heard of. If you can. I thought you'd be driving on site here today and have ideas.
Well, you do, don't you? You kind of look at things differently. So the house that we currently live in at the minute, so it's a grade 2 star listed property in Cheshire, which I think in our local area, I think there's only 2 or 3. So whenever we spoke to planning and we've looked at title splits and we've gone through the whole process, the kind of feedback that we got from the local planner is that where we live is the jewel of Holton. So it was a big step for us. It was a big step from like where we were, where we kind of come from, and we were really kind of punching to be able to get it, but which at the time, I think there was a dream, and the dream was that we've known the area from being young, and then we used to drive past this road, and I think from a very young couple, we used to think, at one point in our life we might be able to live there, And then I think it just happened by chance that we come across a property on for sale, and it was on the same road that we really liked. And we started down this process of trying to buy it, and we missed out on that property because we were too late to the party. And then at the same time, this property then popped up. It popped up for sale, and it was in the region. I think it was like 2 million or 2 million plus at the time, which was like we could never afford that. And it kind of come off the market for I think 12 months or 18 months, and within those 12 or 18 months, like our circumstances changed dramatically, you know, due to property and investments and how we'd grown. And I just kept thinking about this one deal, and I kept thinking about it. You know, it was a lot of money, and we didn't meet the affordability criteria to be able to buy it. So it was just a case of like, well, how can we buy it? How can we buy it? And how can we buy it? And then, you know, the more we thought about it, the more we thought, well, there's an option here to not only do a title split to make some money when we buy, but then there's also an option for us to add some planning. And property is in the center of this kind of diagram, and if you've got a spider diagram, and the more legs that you can add onto that, potentially the more money that you can make. So great deal for us. We end up getting a discount from what it was originally listed at, which I think was the 1.5 million. Today, if we were to sell it off individually, I think you're somewhere in the region of, I think 3.5.
That's insane. But that's because you've got the knowledge, and it's power. Knowledge is power. But you secured that with a ridiculously low amount of money.
We did, but then obviously if you secure it with low money, it also increases the risk. So it's that risk for reward. So I'm not going to say it was easy, because it definitely wasn't. And there's been a load of hurdles. You know, it's taken us we've been in the property now 4 years. We actually love the property, but we're now actually getting to the point where we're going to sell it. So, and we're just going to move on to bigger and better things. And I could go through the process in detail, but, you know, it's not actually that exciting. It literally is just, you know, cutting it up. The logistics really boils down to getting some good advice. And if you get that good advice, it doesn't have to be, and it mightn't necessarily be a solicitor, it might just be, you know, a peer, maybe someone you've met at property, someone who's done it before. So there's another guy who's got he's got his own training / networking event in Chester. So he was buying a very similar property to mine, and we ended up sitting next to each other at this event. And I think at first, you know, there was no validation, didn't know who it was. You know, I don't really go to networking events, so I didn't get any kind of like notoriety. And then after we spoke for a while, and then we sat next to each other during a meal, all of a sudden I told him what I'd done, and his ears perked up, and you know, his face lit up, because he told me he was doing exactly the same thing. And then over the next couple of weeks, I think we spoke maybe like 5 or 6 times, but it was like really detailed conversations. And I was like, if it was me, this is how I'd structure it. You know, this is the advice he'd had from his broker, which I disagree with. And just remember as well, like, your solicitor will kind of work with you to the best of their knowledge, but they also don't know what you're trying to achieve. So, but anyway, yeah, I just gave him some really good advice, kind of set him off in motion. I said I wouldn't do this. Asked him what his objectives are as well, because I'm trying to understand what he's trying to achieve. And as far as I know, he's just completed on a very similar deal, and it was based on some of the advice that I'd done, and it was just a random person that we met at a networking event, and very similar property, listed building, multiple title splits, and yeah, you know, like there's ways where. And we've not just done this once as well, we've done it a couple of times now, but if you add that value day one, you can really reduce your loan to value on that property down to as little as nothing, really, if you can add that much value.
It's interesting because you said that you've given him some advice, and then he's gone on and he has done something similar because of that advice that you've given him. And obviously we all think about the importance and talk about the importance of power teams, solicitors, brokers, accountants, how they can help us, keep us on the right side of things, keep us efficient, keep us savvy, whatever. But why did the information not come from another person? Why did it have to come from you?
See, well, there's two sides of it. So a solicitor might give him, you know, this is what you can do. This is what we can do as opposed to a title split. But then the commercial side is a total different side. So the solicitor won't give them, like, it's not financial advice, but it's more based on the structure in which you're going to implement. So because we've done bridging finance, we've done development finance, we've done an array of commercial finance. Now, some commercial lenders might do a loan to value based on the purchase price as opposed to the market value. So an example of one of the deals is when we've done a title split. So purchase price might be 1.5 million day one. That's the purchase price. The minute we split off those titles, for example, I think the day one price was £2 million. So in theory, our day one uplift in value was £500,000. Now, because we title split that off, you won't normally get a lender to lend you on the market value as opposed to the purchase price. But because we had 3 separate lenders, all they really cared about was their own title. So what was their security? How did it look? Did they have access? Did they have the right of access? Was there any restrictions? Which there wasn't. And the minute we completed on the property, it was like, well, 200,000, 450,000, another 200,000, and then I can't remember the other one exactly, but there was about £500,000 uplift in value. But it reduced our loan to value at the time down to, I think it was like 15% loan to value. So there was a 15% deposit, 85% loan to value, and that just made it, that was the difference of us being able to afford it and not afford it. But you can imagine if I decided at that day to not stay in the property and just capitalise on that, I could have gone, right, okay, thank you very much, we've done the work, let's go to market and let's sell it and capitalise on the £500,000. But we didn't. We ended up living in it. We've then added planning. We've the market's increased. We've done renovations to the property, and that's where the real uplift in value has come.
And it's stunning as well. I remember pulling up and I think I rang you and I was like, do the help go around the back or like, can I come through the front door? When are you planning on, it's on the market now?
It's on the market, yeah. So it's on the market. It's on the market for 1.75. Just the main house? Just
the main house.
Yeah.
Aren't you keeping some of the land as well? You said you were going to keep that to do something with in the future.
Yep. So there's 4 titles. So you've got the main house, which is 10 bedrooms, listed building. You've got a 2-bedroom, like a 2-bedroom cottage. I think that was like ancillary to the main house. That was like the servants' quarters. 4-bedroom bungalow, and then there's a coach house to the rear. So the coach house, it's set in its own 2 acres, mature trees next to the canal, the Bridgewater Canal. So it's effectively 4 plots.
That's insane. And you secured that, I think, with 20 grand, 21 grand, something you said.
So initially, yeah, we did. We secured it with, it was a really low, it was like 15 or 20,000. But then that does give us time then to basically be able to structure the deal. And this was, that's where the vendor had a little bit of pain. She'd been on the market. I think she'd had people interested. But this was like another little bit of a key information. So people who were interested in property, because it was one title and it had a buy-to-let aspect, they were really struggling to finance it. And this is the journey that we went down. So we tried to buy it under a residential mortgage, and they said, issue is the buy-to-let aspect, so it's commercial. So we went down the commercial route, and they said, the issue is it's residential and you can't live in it. So that was kind of our journey of us trying to find the cheapest option for finance. We then went for a more expensive option, and then really what we tried to monetize was what's the least amount of money that we can do with purchasing this property. So we did eventually have to put some funds up to buy it, but just because of the way we'd structured it, we did reduce our funds most probably by 50% of what a normal investor would have to buy.
I think when you get to that level, it's a completely different playing field. You're not having to deal with estate agents that go, oh, have you got proof of funds? And you just think, oh, for fuck's sake. No, it's everywhere else. I mean, money is in that many different things. I couldn't even tell you where it's coming from.
Well, they do. I think they do. They still want that information, but providing that you can kind of give them some reassurance. How many properties have you got?
Oh, God.
So they want to know, like, who are you? Have you got some substance? Can you pull it off? Because the agent, they just want to get a sale.
Yeah.
Wrap it up as quick as possible, and then they get paid. So, and if you've got a problematic property, which for us, we looked at this property as a dream come true, but for a lot of other people, no one wants to buy a house with at that kind of value with tenants. So the minute we separated those tenants off away from the property, and it was under its own title, all of a sudden everyone could see the value. It's like, got ya. And there's loads of these little gems where if you spend the time, and you've got the resources or you've got the network that you can utilise, potentially there's crazy amounts of money when you buy, and it's not maybe on the work that you do, but just on the structure in which you put it in. And
then just touching on what you said there about the networks, because if you can lean on your network, I know they say, oh, your network is your net worth. And again, we really didn't understand the value of that. I do now, obviously. That's why we're here. Yeah, it's insane. If you're in front of the right people, it's just knowing how to vet those people. So, for example, obviously we're doing we've got a bit of business together, but when you first met Tony, you met him at a networking event.
I don't think I did. You didn't do any networking event. We went to a networking event together.
You're a recluse.
Yeah, pretty much. Much.
In your grade 2 listed house in the basement.
Yeah. So I've gone full circle. So when I started off property investing, I was going to be a millionaire. I was going to do it on my own. There was a little bit of bravado, a little bit of don't know, whatever, testosterone, you know, it was going to be me. And I think along this journey, you realise that time is the most precious resource that you've got. So if I could do something, make more money and collaborate or work together and we can get there quicker, why would they not want to do that? You know, why would they want to do it on my own?
Because you've taken the ego out of it there. That's the whole point.
Where we met, you made a post on a property group on social media, on Facebook, and it was just, I can't remember what it was just a comment on one of the groups. And for some reason it
resonated.
You know, I saw that you were local to me. We're literally 10 minutes away. Or 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
I think I dropped you a message about whatever it was you posted. We went for a coffee. You know, I said, what have you got going on? We're trying to suss each other out, as everyone does.
As men
I think you turned
do.
up in shorts and flip-flops, as is standard.
How many properties have you got?
Yeah, how many properties have you got? Yeah. So I said, I just bought this, 3-bed detached house. I just bought this. What did you say? I just bought a house in Thelwall.
Yeah.
Let's go and have a look at it if you want. So we went up to have a look at it, and I mean, it was immense. Immense.
It was another title split. It was listed building.
Yeah, 1.5 mil or something like that.
Oh, you showed me that one.
I'm expecting a 2-bed terrace in Warrington, and I turned up to this what was used as a hospital in the war.
Wow.
Acres of land, barns, this, that, and I thought, okay.
Just remember as well, like
Okay.
it's not all gravy. You know, not every deal kind of pans out. You know, there is loads of hurdles, and property is hard. So I think, you know, the more you can mitigate that, the better. So previously, I was just saying, you know, I wanted to be a millionaire. I was going to do it my own. Now, I've given advice to friends, and I've made friends through property, and that one little bit of information can save you. I think the last bit of advice I give to a friend, and it saved me 80 grand. And the objective wasn't any different. The end product wasn't any different. It was just the structure. So then, if the objective is to build and grow and cash flow, you know, why not do it together?
Yeah, I agree.
But you've got to choose your partners right as well.
I think I've made the right decision. But no, I think you do have to choose your partners right, because I think what you've touched on there, I want to be a millionaire, I want to do it on my own. And we see people wanting to do that. I think you can go further when you're with other people. You've got to have a bit of trust there, but you've got to have no ego. And I think you literally have to leave it at the door. I've been guilty of that as well. I think maybe we both are. I don't know about you, but I certainly have in business. I've been like, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that, I'm going to do it on my own, I'm going to go to the top. But actually it's like, why? Why do I want to do that? Is it for status or is it for money? Because money can buy me the things that I actually want in life. I don't really care about being a millionaire. I actually care. It's not about the things, it's the time that money can buy me. And when you take the ego out of it, you do get further when you collaborate with people. But it's not something I ever particularly wanted to do. I think when I was in business with somebody that I came out of business with earlier this year, thank God. And that for me, obviously I do what I do. And we buy houses, we make money and all that. But I do what I do, helping the people in property. Yes, I make money, but also I actually really like doing that. I haven't got like any element of ego bringing to that, being like, oh my God, I'm like the best teacher and mentor. Even though on my social media, I'd be like, there's no one better than me because I'm a qualified teacher. No one's going to teach you better than me. But when I think about that person that I was in business with and what we were trying to build to empower people in property or business or leadership or whatever, I was more about the empowering of people and collaborating and helping them on their journey. the journey. But the other person wasn't. It was about how can I make this person looked at everybody else as an opportunity. Something that, you know, every time that person walked into a room, it wasn't about helping people or giving free advice that would save someone 80k. It was, how can I make money out of that person? And I think I don't think there's any place for ego in business whatsoever. And I think while some people, mostly probably men, no offense to anybody, because you've just admitted you haven't got it, can be quite cutthroat. It can be quite, what's the word? What am I looking for? Not cutthroat. Bit brutal, bit ruthless sometimes, whereas you're like, actually, if we collaborate and we work together, we can all make money. And I'm very much like that, having been a teacher, working in a teaching team where we just want the good of, we want to do well, working as a team for the kids in front of us. That's the background that I'm from. So I came into property, seeing all this ego in the room, thinking, oh God, this is not a comfortable place to be. And you can get sucked into it. But Why did you two then go into collaboration together?
Well, for me, so when I first got into property, I say got into it, I had a few buy-to-lets, and then I've done a few flips, and nothing like what's going on now. But there was no networking, there was no real like sort of Facebook or nothing like this, So there was no training courses that are 30 grand for a year, and so I've never done any of that. I just hadn't done networking. I'd never been trained officially. Just pick things up as you go, and I guess it was just a case of everyone else is doing it. This is what I need to do. And as you grow as well, so I was, again, doing it all by myself. So I'd sell my car, get a buy-to-let, do a flip, keep some of the money, put some on a buy-to-let. When I try to grow it all myself, you can go a long way with JVs. And back then, none of that ever crossed my mind. And now it has.
But there's a risk with JVs, joint ventures. There's a risk, isn't it? We were always, I don't know what you think, but I was always put off doing a JV because when we did the 30k training, which was just, let's face it, an unnecessary amount of money, but we were always put off them. And I think it was because in hindsight, the way that they market it was like, come and give us your money, or, pay us for more training and you don't need to JV with anybody. It's a world that we were unfamiliar with. But what did you think of JV? We've had a few opportunities, part obviously this one, but I'm too cynical and skeptical of people.
You're right too. I mean, me and a business partner of mine, we've got 6 figures tied up in something that didn't go as it should.
You told me about that.
Well,
that's not with me, by the way.
No, not at all.
Us.
Not at all. No, it's something that should have been a quick in and out deal.
Yeah.
And the money's tied up for a lot longer than what we thought. Like I say, it is quite a large sum of money. It is what it is, So yeah, that's just like a bolt onto your comment about there being a risk for JVs. But that was more of a hands-off thing, which I wouldn't probably do again. I want to be involved. I should be involved.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm doing with other projects now. Is I'm involved in them.
So obviously the issue with the JV is really understanding what each person's obligations are, and also if they're able to proceed with those obligations, because at the end of the day, you've got your issues, I've got my issues, we've got our life to run, we've got our own motivations. So really, it's just getting everyone's motivations in line.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, a lot of when we first got into it, and people say JV, I was of the understanding it was always a 50-50, but I don't think that even if you're bringing the same amount of money to the table, it's not 50-50, because somebody might be putting more time into it, somebody might be putting have more knowledge, experience, expertise into it. So I think there's always a chance that you can still make a lot of money with a JV if you both have something to bring to the table, but it's not always a 50-50 split. What do you think about JVing?
Yeah, it's pretty much what you've said, to be honest. We haven't really JV'd with anybody before now, because it's also finding someone you like, on a personal level as well as not all about the money, is it? It's about finding someone that you like, that you get on with, you get a good vibe from. You don't just meet someone for a coffee and say, right, we're JV, and you get to know people over a certain time period, don't you? And
I think it can be how big the deal is as well. Like, imagine I brought you like a really juicy deal, and you were like, that's amazing, that's crazy, please can I be part of it? Then it's down to, is it knowledge, is it experience, what is the deal? And it's ultimately how much money you're going to make and what's the risk versus the reward.
And I think probably, I would make the assumption that the more money involved in the deal, the more risk, but that might not necessarily always be true.
Well, I've secured houses that for more money than Anthony's probably secured apartment blocks. Like you said earlier, it's all about structure and how you do it.
JVs can work really well, or they can just jump off a cliff. So you just need to make sure everything's in line. You've got shareholders agreements, just your share class in general. Who's putting what money in, how's it going to work. Obviously, the more that you've got to do to the property, so the bigger the renovation, that can be like a really big risk. So I, as a property investor developer now, I class myself more as an investor, because I don't really like to develop as much anymore, just because there's not as much profit as what there used to be. So, but if you've got a really large development, what could go wrong? What happens if what happens if you take down a wall and there's some structural issues? What if you've got to rebuild part of it? You know, is that cost being incorporated into it? Is there a risk factor? So the more moving parts, the riskier it is. I wouldn't, you know, the monetary side, obviously it's risk for reward. Like, what is there any cash flow? How much money are you putting down? What's the overall purchase? If you're making money day one, does it really matter? You know, how quickly can you sell it?
It's interesting what you say about development. So I want to touch on that. When we first thought that we could be financially free in a year, I thought, in 5 years I'm going to be building from the ground up. You always wanted to build from the ground up, didn't you? Like actual, like, buy the land, get the planning on.
Yeah.
Why?
Because the amount of developments we were seeing, and we were seeing not just large scale developments like, you know, big companies like, I don't know, Taylor Wimpey and the likes of Bellway and people like that. We were seeing people buying little pockets of land, putting 2 or 3 houses on that plot, and I was thinking, at the time you're driving past them everywhere, and I was thinking, well, someone's doing it, people are doing it, they must be making money on it. There's no way that all them people are doing it and making a loss on it, or are they? I didn't really know. Obviously, you get educated and you know.
I think it's a nice idea as well. Everyone, like, as men, as macho men, we want to be like, you know, builders, gatherers. You know, everyone wants to build their own home.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, it's not all it's cracked up to be.
I couldn't be doing with it. I think I'd rather put some planning on, buy a piece of land and sell it with the planning on. Is it called planning gains? They all these acronyms and names, and just basically buy land with planning and sell it. But there's
a possible trigger as well, I think, was because of this refurb and smelly houses, and they come with their own problems, the damps and damp issues and stuff like that. And then you know, you pay a builder to do a refurb, and everything's good, everything's been a fresh refurb, and next thing you know, a couple of slates have come off the roof 3 weeks later, and you think, oh, I thought this was all checked and stuff like that. And it comes with its problems. I always thought if you're building fresh from the ground up,
there's no hidden, or there shouldn't be any hidden costs.
No.
You know, you could find something, you buy a property, you find something you didn't budget for. You shouldn't have that, or wait, I mean, it does happen. But,
happens on grand designs.
Exactly, yeah.
It's very different as well. So, like, say if I'm a residential builder and I want to build my own house for me, versus I'm a property professional and I want to make money. So I should make money at everything I do, because if I don't, what's the point in doing it? Yeah. So if I get planning and I make a massive uplift in value day one, if I don't make any money on that refurb, what's the point in me, or that build? Sorry, what's the point in me building out? So there's plenty of people out there that I see that they'll make the money when they purchase. So they'll buy, you know, a dirty, smelly property, or they'll buy a B&V, or they'll buy direct to vendor, or they bought it off market. So they've made the money day one. Then they'll spend, say, 40,000 on a refurb, but they'll only have 40,000 in value. So I'm sat there thinking, well, you know, great that you're going for the cash flow, and yes, it will be an all money in, all money out deal. But if I'm going to then spend 3 months on a refurb, I'm not monetizing my time. So I might as well sell that property on, capitalise on the money that I've made, and then invest my time and money elsewhere.
And you're about time.
Time
is a currency.
Time's the new currency. Money's the unit value.
And since meeting Neil and Tony, we look at things a bit differently now, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that's really good. Well, how do you look at things differently?
Just like Tony's just explained.
Yeah, obviously there's a certain amount of work that we have to put into things, and we're not afraid of hard work. Like, I was working like 3 jobs up until I was about 23. But I think, again, everyone gets into property, I want to make loads of money, but it's like, well, what's the point in having all that money in the bank? What's that money actually buying you? So
what's your why, isn't it?
What's your why? Does that resonate? Yeah.
Well, do you know what?
Hallelujah.
my business partner's wife actually said that. We were, it was last Christmas, was it? We were having some drinks, and I said, I do this and do that. She said, you know, why? Like, you just don't stop, ever. You don't turn off. You know, it's like, just 3 in the morning, and you're up and you do this.
I know why you do that at 3 in the morning.
So I said, well, it's for my family, you know, it's for my wife, it's for Macy, my daughter. She said, yeah, but you'd be like this anyway, even if you didn't have a daughter. Yeah. And I said, you know what, yeah.
Would you be bored? You'd be bored.
So I can't sit there and watch the TV and watch Netflix when I know I've got something to do. And there's always something to do. There's a backlog of multiple things to do. So, I mean, not that I'd want to sit there and watch something. I enjoy what I do. I'd enjoy editing a book or going through some properties rather than watching some naff film on Netflix. But I'd feel guilty. I feel like, Neil, what are you doing? Why are you wasting time? Go and do some work. To a point where it's probably, it does take the piss a little bit. But it's just me. That's just the way I am, and that's it.
I could probably tell you exactly why you're like that and why you're the way you are and why you're the way you are, but I'm not qualified to do that. But I genuinely think that there's a reason. It's chasing dopamine. That's what it is. It's the idea of, if I do this, I'm being productive, and you're basically creating the dopamine in your brain. But that's really common for a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, to be busy all the time. Sometimes I've found myself being busy, and then I've got to the end of being busy and I've thought, what the hell have I just done there? Like, I've achieved nothing.
I feel the same. And you'll get in bed, and again, it's usually 2 or 3 in the morning is my time. And I sometimes think, what have I done today that's actually been worthwhile? And I have done things, but, where it's lots of little jobs, you think, I haven't done anything. And the next minute I'm up, and I'll go and write a chapter of a book.
Follow the money.
Follow
follow the money.
So yeah, is it a money making activity? Yeah. And ultimately, so how important then? We're talking about time being a currency, and I believe that it's not like, I don't want millions and millions in the bank. Well, we know cash in the bank's wank anyway, but we don't want millions and millions in cash. I don't want I'd like a yacht, but I don't want a fancy car, fancy yacht or anything like that. I just want more time, the freedom of time to do what I want with it, and obviously so do you. Yeah. How important is it to have, I know I hate all this cheesy stuff, the journey, is it resonate? How important is it? Is it more of a why? Is it important to have a why? Or is it important to have a what for?
Your why can change.
I think it's focus. It's literally focus, because, without focus, the objective is money and goals and time. But without focus, you're like running around like a headless chicken.
How do you find your focus?
Follow the money. Follow the money. So everyone talks about a vision board.
Yeah.
So what you want. So what you really need. Like we've got a big house, so I can't really say like I've bought the big house. Yeah. It was a great investment. Even though it's a liability in the short term, because it's costing me money. Would I do it again? It's lovely. My little boy's grown up there. But if I would have sold that asset, capitalised, got the cash in, potentially that would have bought me more time. So I think there is a little bit of bravado, and if you can get over that, this is what I own, this is who I am, this is how many properties I've got. If the objective is money, then focus on the money. If the objective is cash flow, focus on the cash flow. But
then you need a reason why you want all that money.
It is, yes. And if you said what's my reason, I wanted to have like an extraordinary life, and I wanted to travel, and I want a sailboat, and I want to have, I want to be able to travel the world and have that time back. But the problem with property is the more property that we held, the more. It wasn't a liability, but the more things that we had to do, and the more rooted we become in the UK. So the objective always was to travel, and now we're changing our perspective in ourselves, because you get to a certain level, and it's always evolving. But really, I would like to focus more on the money and not just on the holding of the assets, because it's lovely having all these assets, but really the objective is that we're doing it for the money. Yeah,
because it's not passive, is it? It's that people say, oh, you get passive income, and most of it's passive, but it isn't. Sometimes it's a headache. Yeah, it's not even, I would say, people talk about social housing. Oh, it's truly is it fuck? It's not truly passive. We have to go and inspect the properties, because these charities, it's all good and well, but they don't know anything about property. So it's not passive. So it doesn't. So the more assets you own, great. It depends on what your why is, what your goals are, but the more problems you incur.
Unless you've got loads of money, 9 times out of 10, your property business isn't a business. Property investing is investing, because it takes that long to get your money back. It's really hard to get your money out and go again, and the time periods in between. How long does it take to buy a property? How long does it take to renovate? How long does it take to get planning? How long does it take to refinance or sell? So, a typical deal could be 12 months minimum. It's really easy to spend your money. It's hard to get your money back in. So if I've bought a property and I've got conveyancing, I've got legal fees, I might have survey fees, I've got my my finance fees, and then stamp duty on top of that. If you take all those fees into consideration, unless I'm adding value to that property, it might take me 12 months or 18 months just to break even.
And the rest.
So it's like, do I want to buy a headache to break even? And the answer is no. Obviously, everyone wants to make money, and that's the reason why we're in it. So jumping back to your question, how do you focus is important, and you just need to focus on where the money is and how do you get it, and are you monetizing your time?
But the why for you is to live an extraordinary life.
The why is just to have an extraordinary life and to be able to do what I want to do, and not have to be tied to a job that I don't like, and 40 hours a week for the rest of my life and just, do 5 days a week and then go out the weekends or see the lads or watch football or have a few drinks down the pub. Like, it's all right. But, do you want to do that every single week?
But that's the difference, isn't it? Because some people are quite happy living that life and there's nothing wrong with it. The difference is there's a select few people in the world, like us, like some other people probably listening to this thinking, I don't want that mediocre life. And for some people, it's not mediocre. But for some people like us, we're like, no, I want to be able to live a life limitlessly, whether that's time, money, experiences, travel, whatever. That's my goal.
It might be legacy. It might be like, for your kids.
For some people it's legacy. Yours is...
your why changes, or at least mine did, or does.
You've also got to live though as well.
Yeah.
You've got to live.
Yeah. See, mine was I want a nice car, I want a nice house.
Yeah.
Then it was I want to provide for when I got my family.
Yeah, priorities.
I want to make them a nice life, comfortable life. Now it's generational. So grandkids, not only my kids, grandkids, and I want that. So it's evolved.
Because you guys have both got kids actually, so that's the difference. I think a lot of people do what they do for themselves, but also for the kids. We've got dogs. I work so our dogs can have a better life. And so that we can afford the medication that the little one's on, which is a little bit insane. But I think when we started, what's your why, Phil? Because it does change, like you said, since you've had a child, your priorities change when you have children. But what was I think ours was just to get out the job.
But the why, the why thing for me is it's just in people have it. It's just in them that they have to just strive to do it to be successful. And for me, the why. It will happen regardless of the why.
I think initially it starts off as like delayed onset of gratification.
Yeah.
So, the idea that I can invest time and money in something now and that I'll reap the rewards in a later period of time. But eventually you get to the point where you think that's nice. But what about the now? So you want the now money.
Well,
that's me.
That's you.
That's the now money.
But that's also like, I don't want to get too much into it, but that's also like an ADHD thing. It's really difficult for an ADHD brain to have delayed gratification because of the dopaminergic dysregulation. But what's your we'll get into that. What's your why? Or what was it and what is it?
Well, I was gonna touch on what you've just mentioned. Really, I was gonna say like
the now.
Well, you mentioned the dogs. One of our dogs is on medication, so it's quite costly for his tablets. He's now on another type of tablet as well, so that's gone up tenfold. We have to get him.
Baby.
We have to get him certain food, expensive food, so it agrees with him. So
otherwise, not good on that.
So these are people talk about liabilities.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cheaper to have kids.
My brother had 2 dogs and he'd home cook them like meals.
Yeah,
like,
I
honestly,
cook them.
The food he'd be cooking like all kinds of like organic broccoli and steak, and I was like, what is going on?
Does he have kids?
No.
Yeah, they're our babies.
They were the babies.
Yeah.
But you want to. You'll always appreciate the value of money, and you'll never stop doing that. But to look at his bills and go, oh, his insurance has gone up, and go, oh, I forgot. You know what I mean? It just feels like another chink in the chain sort of thing. Whereas I want to overcome that. I want to be.
Money gives you options.
Yeah, I want to be over that and saying, oh, well, his insurance has gone up, but he is getting old, and so
we
what?
dedicate.
Whereas
cash
at the moment, it's just like there's another dent in our outgoings. There's another dent in our outgoings. Want to overcome that.
Yeah.
And not have to, not worry about it, but not have to look at it that way. If you know what I mean.
And one of our property, like what we could attribute to like cash flow of one property.
Just remember
to
as well,
one dog.
There's nothing wrong talking about money.
No.
Because it's a bit of a taboo. The root of all evil. But in reality, we all work for it.
I love money.
Well, they say money doesn't make you happy, but
it does. That is a load of shit. I hate
it.
And money can't buy you happiness. Fucking Joe, who says that? People who are poor and can't make money. Like because you're lazy. When you think you can't make money, or it's about, you said earlier, it's the how do I buy it? How do I buy it? When you say, oh, I can't afford it, and it lets you off the hook.
It's not everything.
No.
But it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's like 90%.
It helps.
And for me, it's probably like 99% of it. Yeah. And I think, even when I was teaching in school, I took a different approach. When I started getting into property, or when we started a property business and we did we come away from the training and we're like higher than a cloud. And we're like, oh my God, we're going to be millionaires. I went back into school and I completely changed my approach to teaching. And I remember saying, it was always in September, when you get your first classes. And I'd have all the kids from like year 7s who were like 11 and 12 to sixth form. And I used to say to them, put your hand up if you want to make money. And they'd look at me as if I had two heads because I'm an English teacher, and they're like, I thought we were here to learn a bit of Shakespeare, miss, because they're obviously more interested in that. Who wants to make money? And they'd get a bit confused and they'd start putting the hand up. I'd be like, it's not a trick question. There's every time, and I know people have a lot to say about education and financial literacy and business, but effectively every time they put pen to paper, they're progressing, they're learning a skill that's going to help them later on in life, whether that's making money in a job, whether that's being an entrepreneur. There's nothing wrong with talking about money. We don't talk about it enough in school. And that's why. So we've got a very Victorian model, haven't we? When we think about when education became free, it was to basically create workers that could go out and work in factories or be half educated so that they can be a cog in the machine of capitalism to make money. And that's effectively what a school was for.
We need structure.
We do.
Not
Yeah.
everyone. Imagine if everyone wanted to be entrepreneurial.
Not everyone's got it in them.
What would we get done?
Yeah.
So when you say
Yeah.
like money's the root of evil, and it's the masses who say that, well, the masses are the structure. They're the people that are building the roads and building the hospitals and the teachers and the nurses, and we need that structure.
Agreed.
So
Yeah.
it's we will always be the minority because we couldn't have a majority capitalist nature, because if everyone wanted to make money, and there is a shift. We're in the era of the entrepreneur, especially now with the internet, and since COVID, it's gone crazy. Everyone's out there and everyone knows that they need to get a second job and they want to make more money. They just don't know how to implement what they want to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of these people at the networking events, they go to network and thinking, if I go to network and I could beat someone who's got loads of money and I'm going to make loads of money, but then they don't talk about money when they're there. Then they'll, how are you in your journey?
How many properties have you got?
But if you went there with a solid objection, is to what do I need,
Yeah.
and what do you need as well. So sometimes I'll speak to someone. I sat down with a planning barrister a couple of weeks ago, and he's through a friend of a friend, and towards the end of the conversation, I'm like, right, okay. What is it that you're looking for? How can I help? And my friend kind of jumped in there and said, Tony's trying to assess if there's a way that if there's some synergy that you can do something together. And that was just, rather than me trying to promote him, I was just trying to find out, is he a rapport, and is he anything that he's looking at doing, and potentially is he something that we could do together? And it's just very blunt, and it's a yes, no.
But then when you're blunt, you know where you stand with people. And I think, if you want to go into a networking event or to meet someone and think, right, can we make money together? Yeah. There's always a taboo. There's always this underlying sort of, can we really talk about this? And we talk about money all the time. It's interesting. I had one of my clients do this a couple of months ago. I said, write a letter to money. I said, and I want you to write this letter to money.
Is this the power of attraction?
Like a love letter?
No, but no, there's a book called You Are a Badass at Making Money. And one of the tasks in there, she says, write a letter to money. And I had my clients do this, and I said, so in your letter, I want you to write how you feel about it. In your conversations about money, are your conversations positive or negative? What's money done for you? How has it empowered you, if at all? And she wrote this letter, and then I made her get 2 highlighters, and I made her go through the letter, and I didn't read the letter, but she showed me the colours. I said, I want you to highlight all of the positive in one colour and all of the negative in the other, and look at the balance. Look at the balance. So are you talking to money, or viewing money or seeing money as positive or negative, something that you have to scrimp and save and work really hard for, or something that comes to you easily and freely? I think it's a mindset thing, but people aren't used to talking about money. And if more people talked about money, maybe they'd be in better financial positions. We talk about money all the time. We talk about money, but it's very difficult for people who don't deal with money on the scale that we do to even have those conversations. And I think that's part of the problem in society. Yes, we can't afford for everybody to be entrepreneurs. We can't afford for everyone to make the kind of money that we make or want to make. Mm-hmm. But in the same breath, if more people had more of an understanding about money, talked about money more often, maybe people wouldn't be in shitty financial positions.
For me as well, I mean, that's all true. For me, there's something people look at people with money wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
My
nan calls them the idle rich.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nan.
I've been called lucky for the position that I'm in. It's like, okay, yeah. It was all through luck, yeah.
Make your own luck.
You make your own luck.
You create your own luck, yeah. Again, when I was younger, I bought a expensive at the time convertible car. I was 21, 22, pulled up at a petrol station, got out to put my petrol in. I think I had like a Lacoste tracksuit on and Jordan cap, Reebok Classics. Good. And two men got out of a while ago. Two men got out of a white van and looked at me and just went, "You dickhead." I mean, I probably was, but but that
you looked like one, but that's not the point.
That was because of the car.
Because you're in Runcorn.
And I was in Runcorn.
Filming the firm.
They looked at the car, looked at me, and just and that was, they wouldn't have said that if I was in a little couple of £100 car. But I look at somebody in a car, Bentley drives past, I think, wow, well done.
Good for them.
Good for you. And other people looking, oh, dickhead.
Yeah. And it's sad, isn't it, that you get treated differently because of somebody's perception of you. And that's the difference. Have you noticed, I don't know if you've probably noticed that as well, in the past sort of 5-6 years, the way that people perceive us, whether it's our friendship groups or acquaintances or people you work with, they sort of say that, oh, you're in property, so they've got this perception of you that you must be absolutely minted.
I was going to say,
but actually, I've never been.
Because of the property, not because of the Vauxhall Vivaro van. No.
Not because of the Vivaro, no. Or me Hyundai. I just think people look at you differently, and they have a different take on you.
I get asked a lot in work. A lot of times, how's the property business going? How many houses have you got? It's the first two questions that come out.
And why are you still here? Why haven't you quit your job yet?
Yeah, you get that a lot as well, yeah.
People don't believe it.
No.
When I was still working on a job and you talk about the properties, they'd be like, "Yeah, right." I've been sat outside one of our properties late at night, and the police have pulled up, asked me loads of questions. I said, "That's my building," there, and they've gone, "Yeah, right."
Yeah.
And this is when I was a little bit younger, but you do get that, but people just don't believe it. And there is a little bit of people want you to fail as well, a little bit.
Jealous.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
What were you wearing and what car were you in?
It was very casual. I was in a
Lacoste tracky, sovereign rings. I'm not surprised.
Sovereign rings.
Was that you? That was just you. Rockport.
No, none of this. I'm not
Argyle
like
socks.
Shaved head.
It was a black Mercedes. That was it.
They probably thought you were a drug dealer in front of an empty building. Some illicit activity happening.
2 cream cakes.
Yeah. This is the thing, people don't believe it. When I quit my job in teaching, there was this one woman came round to me, and like you said, people want you to fail, don't they? Like, I think some people just want you to. They don't like seeing people do well. And she said to me,
I don't know if they want you to fail, but they don't want you to be super successful, because they'll look at you and think like there'd be jealousy and envy. And,
it's scary for people though, isn't it? It's like that crab mentality.
It's like you're leaving them behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting ahead. That's what I was going to say.
So you were saying money was a taboo before.
Yeah.
How often does someone say, "Well, I'm Stephanie and I earn 24,000 a year or 30,000 a year or 40,000 a year." No one really talks about it. So then when you want to talk about money and investing, it's like, well, I don't really want to tell you what I'm on, because then it shows you where I am in life potentially. There's a reflection of you based on what you earn.
Status,
which is crap really, because you could be earning, I don't know, I could be earning 40 grand a year, but I could have a couple of million assets. So, do you know what I mean? This is what this is what people don't want to be left behind. People don't. I think some people like who are insecure or think, oh, there's a bit of jealousy, but I'll never be like that. That's when people don't want to see you do well. But also, it's scary for people. Like the idea that, I'm just a normal person. I've been a secondary teacher for over a decade. Well, not anymore. Well, still am, but not in secondary school. For me to have gone from that to what I'm doing now, it's scary.
It's all about as well.
It's unusual.
You've got to have some sort of risk tolerance. You've got to have balls, excuse the want of a better word, but
what does it say about it being a cockfest?
What would be the female version of that statement?
I can't possibly say that when my family listen.
Who else? Not many people would walk away from a job and just like, what I'm going to do now? I'm going to make this work.
Hen party.
Yeah, but it's risky as well.
Yeah, who else will? A lot of people remortgage their own home, take on more debt, put that into a business, to property to grow it. I've done it. My pension from the chemical industry. I have getting back to SAS. So I know, but everyone's
true. No, they need to
opinion. There's hundreds of people down there where that place is, all with great pensions.
Obviously,
that can be a lot greater.
The caveat as well, if you're going to remortgage your money and invest into something, you've got to be super confident in that what you're investing is the right deal.
Yeah,
it can't be on a whim. You've got to be like 100% sure that, you know, it's the right thing to do, because we live in a changing market, and, you know, it could be environmental, it could be, you know, worldwide. So it's just making sure that, you know, if you're doing it, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons.
Many people wouldn't even consider it. You know, the pension thing. People, you can't touch that. That's my pension. It's like, well, yeah, okay.
But people need to know about pensions, and we laugh because every conversation we have, you pull up the SAS pension. You
Love it. I love them.
Have you got a SAS?
I couldn't even, I know how much is in my teacher pension, but I don't have a SAS pension.
I've
My
never had a
teacher,
pension.
but you don't need a pension, I don't think, when you've got property.
No.
When you're
That
going,
is your pension.
that is your pension, and you can make more.
It's a way to utilise.
But you've already had the pension that you can.
Yeah, it's a 22-year-old pension. Well, it was 2 pensions that I now have got control of to invest in my business.
But that's so you've built up a really good pension to be able to do that. Not everyone.
Well, yeah and no. So yes, I suppose it's okay, but it could be a lot better, which is why I've took it, because we can make it, or I can make it.
You can make more money on it.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, the story is, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, work for a good company, get a good pension, be safe, be secure.
That's it, no risk. People don't take the risks, and these are risks.
But they're calculated and educated risks, and I think that's the difference. My pension, I had a good job as a teacher, you work in Airbus, you've got a good pension, it's, you know, it's all right. But really, it's not really, it's shit. And compared to what we know we can earn and what we do and what we can earn, and that's the difference. You can take your pension and go, actually, I'm going to make more money on this, create more security for myself. But I also think it's network, knowing the right people. Yeah.
It's honestly, time's your biggest one.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, I know you may be frustrated with the schooling system because we're not taught to look after money, and, you know, you'll have your own constraints. But in reality, there's nothing wrong with that, because if we come out of school or college or university at the ripe old age of early 20s, you've got enough time to do whatever you want. You know, like, I love compound growth, and compound growth is interest on interest, capitalising, reinvesting, and getting interest on your money and your interest next year. So, like, we've spoke about a couple of figures, but 15% is like a magical number. If you can try and make 15% net compound every single year, your investment doubles every 5. So if you start off with a small investment pot of £10,000 in your early 20s, and that goes to 10, 20, 40, 80, 160, 320, 640, you know, it doesn't take a lot of time. Well, it does take a lot of time, sorry, but it's not a lot of hard work. All you need to know is that what your investment parameters are, and it's 15% net per year. And you could basically retire off a small £10,000 investment, but it would take a lifetime. The big difference here is then when you start to become educated, and you can really utilise and get some bigger ROIs or leverage other people's money, and you know, think and grow. You know, imagine changing that narrative from 10,000 to 50 or 50 to 100, and you just keep compounding.
Did you learn about this in school?
No.
Where did you learn all of this? Just property, or you, Neil, as well? No.
So I think. We just started. I'd say Rich Dad Poor Dad was the first kind of delve into property, finance, education, and we just started off just listening to audiobooks. Wanted to invest into property. You know, we'd done the usual buy-to-let stuff. We'd done some HMOs, and then you start to think, right, okay, you know, you're driving in your car, and you think, I want more. How do I get more? And you start to think of that narrative. How do I get more? What do I need to do? And this was 9 years ago. There wasn't loads of networking back then. And I also maybe didn't want to go to it. I thought, you know, it was maybe just full of pompous...
Cockfest.
Maybe, yeah, definitely. And I was like a young lad, and I thought the more I worked, the more I got. So I was working my full-time job as an engineer, and then doing property as and when. Like, literally, I'd come straight from site to my other site, my building site, and I'd try and build it that way. And then I quite quickly learned that we'd run out of time. And then once you run out of time, that, you know, there's only so much time that you can give. So it was really just leveraging that time and making sure I'm not running around like a busy idiot. But really, it's not the more you work, the way you make the money. It's in the, to work smart, to work hard, you've got to work smart.
Yeah, I'm all about working smarter than harder. What about you? Did you learn about this stuff in school?
Compound interest in
Anything?
school? No,
Money?
I didn't. For me, the interest thing come from my ISA. So I do stocks and shares. And when I get my, I do it all now on an app on the phone. You get your dividends paid in. You know, go for dividend growth stocks, blue chip, etc. You get your dividend, you reinvest it.
So,
So then you get through the next quarter, so you get a dividend on a dividend, and then you put another dividend in, you get a dividend on your dividend, and next minute you see it.
Dividend on dividend.
dividend on the dividend.
Say that 3 times.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's and as well books. We've all read the books, and podcasts, etc.
I think once you learn to invest, you look at everything like an investment.
Yes.
So do I buy a car? If I'm going to buy a car, do I lease a car? If I put so much money in buying the car, what would that money make me in my own fund? So the minute you get, and Excel is like a vital key skill, yeah. So once you know how much money you can make on every single investment, every single penny you earn, and then the difference might be, well, am I adding value? But like generally, you'll have a base model of an interest rate of 15 or 20 or whatever. Once you know what that is, every investment that you do or every purchase that you do, you'll cross-reference it and you'll think, well, by buying that car in 5 years, I might be £50,000 worse off because depreciation, there's no capital appreciation, there's, my money's not working versus do this lease. So that is where the delayed gratification comes in, because there's that short-term sacrifice potentially for that long-term goal.
And we all know
Well,
vehicles depreciate.
I want a car, and I just can't bring myself to do it because the price of the car would get me a bloody good investment. And I'm thinking, well, I'll just drive this thing till it stops working.
You've got a lovely car.
Yeah, could have a nicer
Still a
one.
nice
Could have
car.
a nicer, but no, that and I mean, I want to buy my daughter a car, and I hope she didn't see this podcast because she didn't know we're going to buy her a car. But
I'll make her follow me.
yeah. So we'll buy her a car. Nothing too fancy, but instead of going out and buying the car, will go out and make an investment, and then the cash flow from the investment will pay for the car. And like I say, you Anthony leases. So,
that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, you just think differently.
You're right when you say when you do what we do, you do attribute everything to. It's always like, right, well, if I do this with this money instead, what can it make me? That's why we've just converted. I painted it and made it pretty. Phil's just converted a van into a camper van, and he's done a brilliant job. But the money that we put in it, and you're just thinking, oh my God, I know it's a hobby and I know we can afford to do it. We're just thinking the more you plough into this, the less we're going to make, and we won't break even. It's a depreciating asset. It's a depreciating asset. That's why I don't want my own yacht. I want to lease one.
It's really interesting as well. Like, so when you get really good with your figures and you can itemize like how much money you're going to make, if you drag and drop that over a 5, 10, 15, 20 year kind of time period, the difference is like astronomical. So when people would say, I'd rather spend 20 grand on a wedding because that's my commitment to each other, I'd be like, well, that 20 grand could be worth 40, 80, 160, 320 in 20 years. And I'm thinking, well, would I rather be in 20 years, would you rather be married, have that one big day, or have an extra 320,000, which then allows me to retire 20 years earlier?
But that limits you, because then you're thinking, that's on the assumption that 20k is the only 20k you're going to make. Whereas I'd be like, if I want to spend 20, 30, 40k on a wedding, I wouldn't.
It's a resource, isn't it? That's the difference.
Yeah.
So cash now for us, money before was this fiat currency that we could buy things with. Now it's a resource that we want to utilise and help grow more money.
Grow wealth, yeah.
So then it is the idea. And people say, look, I'd just get married anyway. It wouldn't bother me. So so when we bought one of our properties, there was actually a 30,000 tax saving because we weren't married. So then there's other tax savings by not being married. And then if you compound that one little investment or that one little deal that we never did, which we never got married, 30,000 in 30 years, 30,000 in 30 years is worth 1.8 million.
You're going to give him ideas now.
What do you call a wedding a deal?
Well, and that's it. It's just compounding.
Does Laura
cost.
know this?
Well, we're not married, so yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Does she know you? This is giving him ideas now. I agree. There's a woman who's written a chapter in the Women in Property book, Louise. She won't mind me mentioning her, and she does mention, do we want to spend all that money on a party, or do we want to invest it in the future?
You could travel.
And I think, when you look at it, I mean, if you come in with an engagement ring of the size that I would actually find suitable for my hand, I'd be like, what a waste of money. But a part of me would be like, oh, I'm a print. But then I'd be like, what a waste of money. Could have put that in something else.
It's a good job then that I literally say in my own head every morning what Tony's just said.
Oh, yeah. Thanks
just remind myself.
You're not coming again.
I don't think you're not allowed to pick your ring, are you? You get what you're given.
Yeah, but I want to see where the Titanic hit it. But then I also know it's a waste of money.
We've got rules. It's got to be 3 times your monthly wage and all sorts.
Yeah, so... Yeah, you have proposed to me with a Haribo ring before in my auntie's and uncle's kitchen, and
He's drunk.
Have you still got it?
Yeah.
The picture or the ring?
The ring.
No, I had it.
I was gonna say.
Letting that go to waste. Anyway, we'll call it a day there. So thanks so much for coming, guys. I really appreciate it. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow me on Instagram. It's at Steph the Property Teacher. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.